We begin with developing news from Iowa City. According to multiple published reports, Iowa head coach Kirk Ferentz and wide receivers coach John Budmeyer will each receive one-game suspensions stemming from their recruitment of former Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara, a process that allegedly began prior to the transfer portal officially opening in 2022. With that, we welcome you inside this edition of Big Ten Today. Rick Pizzo and the Road Warrior, Howard Griffith, back in studio. The training camp officially wrapping up. Yeah. You've done 18 of these now, I believe, 17 or 18 dating back to the genesis of the Big Ten Network. I assume they're always fun. And that, like any vacation, I assume at the end, you're pretty happy to be home.
Yeah, I'm excited to be back in studio. It's fun, obviously, to go out on the campuses and have a chance to interact with coaches and the players. But now it's time to really see them play some football. And I'm anxious to see the season in Week 1 get kicked off.
Yeah, Week 1, just some 9-10 days away for the Big Ten. Week 0 begins for other leagues this coming weekend. Football season officially upon us. Our big story is the big and official goodbye to the 2024 Big Ten Network Training Camp Tour. 18 schools, 24 days, thousands of cups of coffee consumed, visits with familiar faces, and at some new places. The tour made its way to the West Coast for the first time ever. And with that tour in the rear view, it is time for us to look ahead to the Week 1 schedule. It's been the first time in a couple of years, don't have a Week 0 game on the slate, but there are some important games on the big board. Focus on games like Minnesota has, a barometer against North Carolina. Iowa should be intriguing depending on exactly what happens with Kirk Ferentz and that suspension. Who is the acting head coach if he is not able to be part of that Week 1 game against Illinois State? Also, you can't forget about games like the one that Penn State has against West Virginia. Other teams trying to get their season started in the right fashion. Let's start with the team that begins the year as the predicted Big Ten favorite, and that is Ohio State, coming in number 2 in the national rankings. You got a chance to get to Columbus to see this team. By all accounts, they are everything we expect them to be, from the backfield to that loaded wide receiver position, and of course a defense that has 8 or 9 guys that could have been, Howard, part of this past spring's NFL draft.
And probably another one in Downs that could be playing in the NFL right now. This Ohio State team is absolutely loaded. Sure, the questions are Will Howard at the quarterback position, but he doesn't have to be a great quarterback at the beginning of the year. There are going to be situations where he's obviously going to have to make some big throws in games. But right now, this team, when we saw them, they are dialed in physically, mentally, understand the pressure that is on them, that they have placed on themselves. I like where this team is right now. They just need to continue to play these games and find out if Will Howard can be that dominant player that they need him to be at the quarterback spot.
Before we get into some of their positions of strength, and there are multiple positions of strength, I do want to talk about the mindset. You just mentioned that you feel like this team is ready mentally and understands the pressure that it's on it. I had the chance to talk to Cody Simon earlier this week. He's a team captain, was awarded with the Block O, one of the highest honors, true leader. And I asked him how many of the decisions to come back for 2024 were based entirely on the fact that a lot of guys don't have a pair of gold pants. I expected him to say something like, listen, we want to win every game. The national title is the ultimate goal, but that's a big reason. He said it is the main reason why almost everybody came back. It's fascinating to me. This team is not shying away from any of the pressure that they know will be put on it.
I can tell you what, when you look at this team, you only need to look north for them. And look at what Michigan did. And that was a veteran football team. And I think Ohio State from this point wanted to have veteran guys still on their team that had an opportunity to understand what it means to get those gold pants. This group doesn't know. So they have a mindset that they want to get that. You talk about the pressure. They say, well, you got to win it all. Absolutely. That's what they expect to do. That's what they want to do. And when you have veteran teams, and this is a veteran team with veteran leadership, this was one of those years that really, when talking with Mickey Marotti, their strength and conditioning, the head of strength and conditioning for them, he could just give those guys the keys because the expectation of what was expected of this team was already set by their veterans. And you can never underestimate when you have guys that understand what the mission is and they have a drive and understand what that's about. you can't count this team out, and that's why so many people are picking them to win the Big Ten. Oregon's going to obviously, and Penn State and some other programs are going to have a lot to say about that. But when I say this team's dialed in, they are. They understand the mission, and it's going to be fun to watch.
And they do have that road trip out to Eugene. It's on October the 12th, already being talked about as one of the most important, most anticipated games of the year. We haven't even kicked off the season yet, and we're looking into the middle of October. But when you look at this team, position by position group, and I understand there's a question at one of the guard spots, but every coach in the country right now is saying, oh, Ryan Day, cry me a river. You have one issue at one of your guard spots, and you're loaded everywhere else. This is one of the few teams in the country that is deep, and too All-American quality deep at positions like running back, wide receiver, defensive line, and in the back seven. I'm just not so sure where you find a weakness as long as this team stays healthy throughout the course of the year.
Yeah, I think health is obviously a big part of it, and really managing the schedule. So I think that when you think about a team like Ohio State, this is a team that's going to, with everything stays the way it should, they're going to be in that 12-team playoff. And I think when you talk to programs and to teams that have a chance to do that, they want to continue to add depth. They know what the front line looks like, and really they're number two guys. But when you look at their wide receiver room, we know it's loaded, but they want to get down to who's going to be the fifth, who's going to be the sixth, who's going to be the seventh. That's where you're trying to manage these guys' reps. And yeah, you're trying to win every game, no doubt about it, but you want to get as many guys the reps and the experience they can have so that it pays off down the line, because I think one of the things, it's cumulative. You can get young players 10 plays a game. What happens when you get to game 12, to game 13? These guys are seasoned veterans by that time, and that's a great problem to have, and Ohio State has it.
Yeah. Speaking of seasoned veterans, we transitioned to Penn State, and I know Drew Aller's still a fairly young man, but at this point he is a seasoned veteran at quarterback. I'm fascinated to watch this team offensively. Will they be willing to take the top off this year and go downfield, even though there are some questions as to whether they have those guys on the explosive edge? And will they be able to take care of business in week one? Because I think that West Virginia game could absolutely set the tone for Penn State throughout the course of the year, and that's a great description. It is a tricky season opener.
It's one of them, and they understand it too. But I think when you look at Drew Aller, a lot goes on his shoulders, and they're going to place a lot on his shoulders. They have a new offensive coordinator who was unbelievable when he was at Kansas, talking about being able to be creative and getting his players the football out in space. This is one of the things we saw. We saw, Drew really getting the ball, getting it out of his hands quickly. I think he'll be a big part of the run game as well. He's a lot more athletic than I think people give him credit for. But this is a team that is loaded. And you go to the defensive side where Tom Allen resides, and I mean, talking with him, he's got, to me, I would say it's more of a new leash on life, really excited about what he's doing, because he doesn't have to worry about all the other things.
Just coaching now.
I'm just coaching football, and the excitement in his voice, although he still has some problems with it, was really
I think
great
that's
to see.
part of why he has problems with the voice, and sometimes he gets so excited.
Yeah, but they're loaded on the defensive side of the football. So this is a team that's going to be in the mix. We talked about the quarterback position. Drew is going to have to make those 3 or 4 plays not in every game, in their biggest games, to make a difference. And he'll be challenged early in the season versus West Virginia.
And I know those of us who follow Penn State, who follow the Big Ten, are very familiar, and we expect massive things, not big things, massive things this year from Abdul Carter. What are your impressions?
He's got a chance to be the best defender in college football. And the reason he can do that is because he can play at the linebacker position. He can go put his hand on the ground and rush from the defensive end. But I would not be surprised. I was a year early because I thought they would have been doing this last year. You can put him over the center and he will cause problems anywhere on the field. They're going to have to figure out a way to account for him wherever he is. He is very disruptive, and that secondary is pretty good as well. So this is a defense that they're going to get after. Some of Tom Allen's best teams, best defensive teams, were really aggressive at the point.
Talked about the pressure that Ohio State is clearly feeling. How much pressure do you think James Franklin is feeling? There are so many other coaches and programs that would be thrilled with what he's done in his decade plus, right? Double-digit wins almost every season, big-time bowl appearances, big-time bowl game wins. But so much of that criticism, when are you regularly going to win the biggest games? Do you think they feel that in State College?
I think you'd be naive if you didn't think they did, right? Because that's the narrative right now. Can you beat the Ohio States consistently? Can you beat Michigan consistently? Can you beat Oregon, the top teams, right? When they're on your schedule, and that's just a byproduct of where James Franklin has gotten this program to. They're regularly expected to be right there. Now, how do you become great, or how do you become elite, which he talked about a couple of years ago? You have to be able to go out and win this game. They haven't been able to do it, but what's terrible about it, what I don't like about it, is because he's still having a success, that he's measured by those particular games. It's similar, I mean, listen, Ryan Day is in the same situation. He's measured by one game, and James Franklin may be measured by 2 games. So, you know, it's tough, but to be in that position, I think, is the most important part. Once you're there, you have an opportunity to win it, and he's got him in great position to do it again.
That top 40 in the country in returning production, nearly 70% of that production, including not just Drew Aller, but of course those 2 guys that stand behind him, in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, who will need to have, I think, more of a productive 1-2 year than they had a year ago for Penn State's offense to be where new OC Andy Kotelnicki wants it to be.